p.m., far within Belgorod, only 25 miles from the border with Ukraine, the sense of security was exploded in a moment. Don't missed the end from out of the blue. A pack of Ukrainian kamikaze drones flew low above the treetops, speeding straight into Russia's subterranean command center, the very nerve center directing artillery and drone strikes close to Kyiv. Just at the same time, Russian radar screens began to flash with phantom returns from the southwest, confusing technicians and suggesting that this was no random attack but a deliberate blow at the brain of Russia's front line. In seconds, placidity was replaced by pandemonium. Decoy drones flew high to simulate oncoming fighter jets, saturating radar defenses, while FPV drones buzzed perilously low, crashing into a ground radar station and sending Russian crews scrambling to repair. Up above, Ukrainian MiG-29s dropped precision rockets on a motor pool filled with fuel trucks and armored vehicles, causing air defense troops to split their firepower between the air and the ground. Each step was calculated, choreographed to break Russia's defenses in pieces. As radar monitors malfunctioned and fuel trucks blew up, Ukraine cracked the battlefield door open just far enough to shake the hinges of Belgorod's fortress. And while Russia struggled back from the first wave, a second phase of the plan was already underway. Ukrainian electronic warfare troops moved into concealed positions, inundating the battlefield and jamming signals, knocking out radios, incapacitating GPS, and isolating commanders from the reinforcements. Into that darkness crept ground robots no bigger than motorcycles, creeping quietly over ditches and roads to lay mines and charges at concealed exits and tunnels. It wasn't a matter of charging the bunker at point-blank range, but one of cutting off each avenue of escape, so that if Russian officers attempted to escape or reinforcements attempted to burst through, fire awaited them. In the meantime, Ukraine's ground forces came at it in mass, showing that the fighting wasn't merely conducted from the air. Mobile mortar units with 81mm tubes ran into pre-attack positions along the border and quickly laid down suppressive fire, shredding access roads, wrecking staging areas, and keeping Russian quick-reaction troops pinned to the ground before they could even attempt to counterattack. The relentless thump of mortars was heard through the line of trees, closing the perimeter as drones above buzzed in for a look at any movement. This wasn't haphazard anarchy, it was strategy. The heavens were already torn asunder by decoys and rocket attacks, and now the earth itself was constricting around Belgorod's fortress in a vice. The electronic jamming that had blinded Russian commanders and the planted mines that had entrapped them left them unaware that their stronghold was already under siege. Then came the hammer blow. At 200 feet over the fields, one F-16 cut through the haze, concealed until now by decoys, static, and the smoke cover of mortar fire. Its target was obvious: drop two 1,000-pound JDAMs bombs on top of the command center. At 3:57 p.m. exactly, the pilot rolled into a steep climb, appearing on radar briefly enough to provide the bombs with altitude and velocity to glide. From 6,500 feet they broke apart, snapping their wings open, aligned on pre-programmed GPS coordinates, each fitted with time delay fuses that would blast through solid concrete and detonate deep within the ventilation shafts of the bunker, caving in its inner chambers. Nearly simultaneously, HIMARS batteries lit up from beyond the border, their precision-guided rockets scorching 25 miles to destroy the antenna cluster and relay hub of the bunker. The dual raids ripped apart communications, making the fortress both deaf and blind even if the building itself somehow remained standing. For Russian defenders, it seemed as if walls were closing in on all sides. The screaming of jet engines above, the whine of rockets on the horizon, and the unrelenting drumbeat of mortars all around. For the first time, Ukraine had combined precision air power and long-range artillery into one catastrophically coordinated blow. The F-16 as a scalpel to cut through to the bunker's heart, and the HIMARS rung out like an axe, cutting off its lifelines. Combined, they created a fire cage no amount of steel doors or subterranean wiring could hold. Within the underground shelter, lights flashed and dust poured from above as blasts jolted the building to its foundation. Operators bellowed into useless headsets, their voices drowned by static, as they could not reach closed by batteries or rapid response units. Panic spread quicker than shockwaves. Inside, the men saw that all layers of their defense had been removed one after another, and now they were left bare. For them, hell's doorway had creaked open, and there was no turning back through it. Topside, the Russian commanders struggled to launch a counterattack, sending armored columns of BMPs and T-72 tanks bursting from concealed revetments just short of a mile from the bunker in a last-ditch attempt to beat back Ukraine's closing perimeter. But Ukraine had been expecting this very maneuver. Quiet in the treelines, T-84 tanks came alive and opened fire with their 125mm guns, turning the lead Russian vehicles into incinerating fireballs. Simultaneously, squadrons of FPV drones shrieked in at scorching velocity, striking flanks and ripping through side armor, creating charred wrecks to clog the narrow approaches. On foot, units of no more than 5 men apiece ran from crater to crater and smashed up farmhouses, RPGs slung over their shoulders to dispatch stragglers, as mobile mortars poured down to fix dismounted troops in position. The battlefield was plunged into a maelstrom. Tanks, drones, and troops crashing into one another in a frenzy of fire and smoke that rolled perilously close to the bunker itself. Fire from burning vehicles licked the defended gateways as Ukrainian units worked their way through the smoke, moving to the sides of machine gun positions and blowing them away at point blank with grenades and suppressive fire. Every Russian attempt to reassemble merely directed more vehicles into the killing area, where T-84s and drones took them apart piece by piece, before the final armored carrier went up in flames. The ground around the command center was littered with nothing but warped metal, broken guns, and acrid smoke from burning fuel. The relief column intended to rescue the bunker had instead been decimated at its doorstep, making the perimeter a graveyard. Ukraine controlled the field the surface battle won. Smoke and wreckage blanketed the stronghold, but the real devastation was still being wrought underground, because high above, the 2 JDAM bombs dropped minutes before were starting their final glide into the bunker's core. The JDAM bombs came down with precision unimpaired, their guidance systems slicing through the electromagnetic soup of electronic warfare as if they were not there. The first hit dead center, falling into a ventilation shaft before its timed fuse detonated. Rather than a blazing surface blast, the explosion pushed compressed air deep in the tunnels, distorting passageways, flickering lights, and groaning steel doors as officers staggered blindly. This fortress was constructed to withstand artillery, but never to withstand shockwaves from the inside out. Seconds after that, the second bomb struck the hardened roof, its blast shattering support pillars and bringing down the central conference room, killing over 24 top Russian officers under tons of steel and concrete. Tactical displays, consoles, and comms equipment were destroyed in an instant. The destruction radiated outward, ventilation ducts collapsed, hallways filled with smoke, and fuel lines burst, plunging the bunker into darkness as backup generators shut down. Above ground, Ukrainian soldiers felt the ground tremble under their feet and knew the attack had hit. The command apparatus was destroyed, beheaded in a single orchestrated blow. By mid-afternoon, the nerve center that had directed Russia's artillery and drone bombardments against Kharkiv lay nothing more than a tomb. But amidst the tangled armor and burning debris, a few Russian troops crawled out of a fallen shaft, battered, choking, and weaponless. They were no longer soldiers, just men crawling out of the remnants of their destroyed command. Ukrainian troops had them in their sights, but rather than put the finishing touch on the job, a command was shouted out, "Hold fire." And behind the veil of smoke, 2 Ukrainians rushed forward, pulling out the hurt, binding bandages, and shoving canteens of water into shaking hands. The Russians were stunned, their salvation at the hands of those who had just brought down their fortress. In that instant, Ukraine sent a message greater than rubble. Strength is not just measured in toppled bunkers, but in the ability to be compassionate. In the midst of war's savagery, humanity had fought a ribbon of honor. By nightfall, Belgorod's subterranean headquarters was quiet, obliterated in one coordinated attack. Moscow's troops lurched leaderless, their guns silenced, their skies disorganized. But the triumph left one haunting question suspended in the acrid fog. If this fortress could be broken open, was any Russian bunker secure? As a single UAV vanished into the clouds over the rubble, the answer remained. The war was by no means done.